Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and drift back in time, not to the comforting narratives of modern self-made entrepreneurs in, say, Silicon Valley, who built empires from garage startups, or the inspiring tales of political figures from humble beginnings in, say, rural Iowa, who rose through democratic means to lead. Instead, we're plunging into the often brutal and profoundly unsettling world of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more. Contemplating the sheer force of will, the unimaginable hardship, and the chilling ruthlessness that forged some of history's most dominant figures. You might picture grand battles and strategic brilliance, but trust me, tonight you'll discover a reality far more visceral, often more agonizing, and sometimes, frankly, downright barbaric. You'd probably find yourself longing for the structured fairness of a contemporary meritocracy, however imperfect. Within minutes of imagining yourself standing as a child in a desolate ancient village, or witnessing the raw struggle for survival that defined their formative years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself now, an ordinary person living in prehistoric times, perhaps akin to a diligent anthropology student from a small, quiet university town in, say, Amherst, Massachusetts, trying to make sense of deeply unsettling historical records. You stumble upon an ancient account, perhaps etched onto a worn rock, detailing the daily life of a hunter-gatherer that chills you to the bone. This isn't the familiar, if often debated concept of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, as understood in modern American folklore. With its emphasis on individual effort and opportunity, this is raw, visceral, and deeply unsettling. A profound assault on your modern sensibilities of safety and personal comfort. Consider yourself a nervous observer, watching early humans trying to survive a harsh winter, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the constant threat of starvation and exposure. Knowing that even a common cold could be a death sentence, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, unyielding nature. Or perhaps a concerned public health official, visiting a museum exhibit on ancient human settlements in, say, Washington, D.C., recognizing the detached efficiency with which human life was extinguished by disease and environmental hazards, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under these primitive conditions. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of job insecurity with modern social safety nets and career counseling in a brightly lit modern suburban home in, say, suburban San Francisco, California, the hushed whispers of ancient hunters. Once a gentle murmur of survival, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant predator calls. The pervasive, almost palpable, scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world, where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of the crown of constant fear, where the very essence of ancient existence was not about profound emotional fulfillment or societal contribution, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily routine into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting survival often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar struggle a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound societal peril. When you think of ancient royalty, you probably picture glittering crowns, opulent palaces, and absolute power. a life of endless luxury and supreme command, far removed from the mundane struggles of common folk. You imagine King Midas with his golden touch, or Cleopatra lounging on silken cushions, or a pharaoh commanding armies of laborers to build colossal monuments. The stories often paint a picture of unrivaled privilege and boundless freedom to do as they pleased, unburdened by the worries that plagued their subjects. You envision grand feasts, exquisite clothing, and loyal servants catering to every whim. It seems like the ultimate dream, doesn't it? To be above the law, to wield ultimate authority, to have every desire instantly fulfilled. You might even, for a moment, feel a pang of envy, wishing for just a taste of that unbridled power and comfort, especially after thinking about the grim lives of ordinary ancient folks we discussed in our earlier series. But tonight, we're going to pull back the veil on that gilded illusion. We're going to step into the lonely, terrifying, and often miserable reality that lay beneath the royal robes and behind the heavily guarded palace walls. You'll quickly discover that the crown, far from being a symbol of comfort, was often a heavy burden, a constant reminder of the unseen threats, the insidious pressures, and the profound isolation that defined the lives of those at the very pinnacle of ancient power. Forget the fairy tales. Tonight, we dive into the chilling truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more. Focusing first on the pervasive dread of the crown of constant fear. A common historical truth is that ancient monarchs, despite their immense power and wealth, lived under a constant, pervasive threat of assassination, rebellion, and usurpation, making their positions inherently precarious and anxiety-inducing. Unlike modern leaders with established succession laws and security protocols, ancient rulers often faced challenges from ambitious relatives, disgruntled nobles, or foreign enemies, necessitating extreme paranoia, ruthless purges, and elaborate security measures, yet rarely guaranteeing true safety. Reflecting a brutal reality where absolute power often came with the overwhelming burden of perpetual vigilance, and the terrifying knowledge that trust was a luxury they could ill afford. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological toll this constant state of fear took on individual ancient rulers, and whether their often documented acts of cruelty or paranoia were primarily a result of their inherent personalities, or a rational response to the genuine existential threats they perpetually faced. Imagine yourself, then, an ancient pharaoh of Egypt, perhaps Ramses II, sitting on your throne in the Grand Palace at Pia-Rameses, akin to a modern-day CEO of a global corporation, accustomed to top-tier security teams, advanced surveillance, and legal protection. You project an image of divine authority and unshakable power, yet beneath the regal facade, a cold knot of fear twists in your stomach. Every advisor and every general and every even distant relative could harbor a hidden ambition, a whispered plot. You gaze upon the vast Nile, the lifeblood of your empire, but your mind is consumed by the whispers of dissent, the distant rumblings of rebellion in a distant province, or the more insidious threat of a poisoned goblet at tonight's feast. There are no Secret Service agents you can fully trust, no comprehensive background checks on your courtiers, no democratic process to legitimize your rule. Your authority is absolute. Yes, but it is also fragile, resting entirely on your ability to maintain unquestioning loyalty, or at least unquestioning fear. A single slip, a moment of perceived weakness, and your reign, and your life, could end abruptly and brutally. It truly sucked to be a pharaoh with a target on your back. This wasn't just abstract political maneuvering, it was a daily, visceral reality. Royal assassinations were terrifyingly common throughout ancient history. From the Roman emperors who met their end by daggers in the Senate or poison in their cups, to the Chinese emperors who faced palace coups orchestrated by eunuchs or empresses. The historical record is replete with examples of rulers dying violently at the hands of those closest to them. The more power you accumulated, the larger the target on your back became. You couldn't trust your food taster, your bodyguard, or even your own family members, because they often had the most to gain from your demise. This wasn't the contained political rivalry of a modern election campaign in, say, Washington, D.C., with televised debates and polling data. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable betrayal. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about the crown of constant fear is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman emperors installing complex tripwire systems and secret passages in their private chambers as a defense against assassination attempts. Where, in the decadent yet paranoid world of the Roman imperial court, some emperors, especially after witnessing the violent ends of their predecessors, commissioned elaborate defensive mechanisms within their own palace suites. These could include hidden escape routes that led to underground tunnels, pressure-sensitive floor tiles connected to alarms, or even mechanisms designed to flood certain rooms with water or noxious fumes, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of engineering ingenuity and the deeply disturbing lengths to which rulers would go to protect themselves from an invisible enemy within their own walls. Imagine yourself sleeping in a bed surrounded by concealed traps and hidden exits, constantly alert to the subtle creak of a floorboard, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to have your bedroom double as a fortress. Consider also the job of a dynastic heir, perhaps a young prince in the brutal Assyrian Empire, akin to a diligent modern heir to a vast corporate fortune, accustomed to wealth management and public relations. Your job is to survive long enough to inherit the throne, a feat often more challenging than ruling. You are raised in a viper's nest of intrigue, where your own siblings, half-siblings, aunts, and uncles might view you as an obstacle to their own ambitions. Every cough could be poison, every friendly gesture a veiled threat. You learn to read every facial expression, every whispered word. For signs of betrayal, you are often sent on dangerous military campaigns, not just to gain experience, but perhaps to be conveniently removed by a scheming general. Your education includes not just statecraft and warfare, but the art of ruthless survival, often meaning you must be prepared to eliminate your rivals before they eliminate you. This profound existential threat from within your own family was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of corporate takeovers with modern legal contracts and public stock offerings in a brightly lit modern office tower in, say, suburban New York City. Historians still widely debate the precise long-term effects of this pervasive intrafamilial violence on the stability and longevity of ancient monarchies, and whether the constant purges and assassinations ultimately weakened or paradoxically strengthened certain ruling dynasties by ensuring only the most ruthless and cunning survived to inherit power. Then there was the ever-present threat of military coups. Imagine yourself as a Roman emperor, a position often granted by the legions themselves. Your power rests entirely on the loyalty of your soldiers and their commanders. A victorious general, leading a popular army, could at any moment march on Rome, declare himself emperor, and you would be deposed, imprisoned, or executed. You constantly had to appease the legions with lavish gifts, increased pay, and promises of plunder, always balancing their desires against the stability of the empire's finances. You also had to contend with ambitious Praetorian prefects, who commanded your personal guard and often held the keys to your survival or demise. Many emperors tried to control these powerful figures by elevating them, only to find themselves betrayed. It truly sucked to be beholden to your own army. This wasn't theoretical, it was a recurrent pattern throughout Roman history. Emperor after emperor fell victim to their own legions, highlighting the ultimate fragility of their absolute authority. The very source of their power could, and often did, become the instrument of their destruction. This wasn't the structured oversight of a modern civilian government over its military, with clear lines of authority and democratic accountability in, say, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. a profound engagement with utter, inescapable military opportunism. Even the job of maintaining public order and legitimacy was a source of constant fear. Imagine yourself as a king facing a famine, a plague. Remember Chapter 2 in the horrors of ancient medicine, or a crushing defeat in battle. Your people, who once revered you as a divine figure, could turn on you in an instant. Riots, insurrections, and full-scale rebellions were common, fueled by hunger, injustice, or religious fervor. You had to constantly project an image of strength and benevolence, performing elaborate rituals and public appearances, all while knowing that a single misstep could ignite the populace into a raging mob that would tear down your palace and your reign. Your life was a performance, and the audience was fickle, capable of showering you with adoration one day and demanding your head the next. It truly sucked to face a hungry mob. The jobs of ancient royalty, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about wielding power, they were about a relentless, terrifying struggle for survival against internal and external threats. The constant paranoia, the fear of assassination, the dynastic intrigue, the military ambition, and the unpredictable nature of the masses all were terrifying harbingers of dubious longevity. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their reigns were not just periods of governance. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every command, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, existential menace. These were the rulers whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more precarious and filled with greater anxiety than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, far from guaranteeing peace or security, often created a gilded cage of paranoia and fear. They make us appreciate the stability of modern democratic institutions, the rule of law, and the peaceful transfer of power, and the profound comfort of knowing that our leaders, however flawed, do not typically live in constant fear of a dagger in the dark or a poisoned cup. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the crown of constant fear, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of paranoid pharaohs and scheming siblings. If Chapter 1 set the unsettling stage for the primal struggle for survival on the throne, tonight we'll plunge deeper into the very core of ancient royal agony palace of poisons and plots. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how even the most basic acts of sustenance and social interaction in the ancient royal courts were fraught with terrifying deception, excruciating paranoia, and a chilling reliance on bizarre and often fatal preventative measures, transforming every meal into a gamble for survival, and every trusted advisor into a potential assassin, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of basic sustenance and courtly power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar ritual a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, a royal figure in an ancient palace, perhaps akin to a diligent food safety inspector from a prestigious public health department in, say, New York City, accustomed to sterile environments, rigorous testing, and ethical food handling. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. And now you face the pervasive presence of a courtly system, entirely divorced from modern understanding, where individual comfort is sacrificed for ritualistic belief or superstitious practice, and every morsel of food could be your last. There are no FDA regulations, no secure supply chains, no concept of forensic toxicology, no appeals processes for political assassination attempts. As found in a modern democratic society like, say, the contemporary U.S. government in Washington, D.C., instead, you witness or are subjected to horrifying precautions. From using food tasters to elaborate surveillance, performed with crude methods and often by individuals whose loyalty is constantly suspect, all designed to protect you from threats that modern security would swiftly address. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern executive protection. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of human dignity and personal safety. Consider yourself a nervous monarch, watching a designated food taster take the first bite of your evening meal, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the agonizing wait for any signs of illness, knowing that even a shared glance with a servant could be misconstrued as a conspiracy, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence, defined by brutal paranoia and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned intelligence analyst, studying historical accounts of ancient court intrigues in, say, Renaissance Italy, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human lives were expendable in the pursuit of power, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient palace treachery. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of corporate espionage with modern cybersecurity and legal non-disclosure agreements in a brightly lit modern office building in, say, suburban San Jose, California, the hushed whispers of courtly gossip, once a gentle murmur of social intrigue, now mingle with the chilling sounds of clattering weaponry and desperate pleas, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate power often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on constant suspicion and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of palace of poisons and plots, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or societal contribution, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every interaction into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar precaution a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a royal feast, you probably picture tables laden with exotic delicacies, fine wines, and jovial laughter. But for many ancient monarchs, every meal was a dance with death, a test of trust, and a stark reminder that even within their heavily fortified palaces, danger lurked in every shadow, especially in the very food and drink they consumed. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, focusing on the chilling reality of palace of poisons and plots. A common historical truth is that poisoning was a widespread and often preferred method of assassination in ancient royal courts, particularly in the Roman Empire, Hellenistic kingdoms, and various Asian dynasties, due to its discreet nature and difficulty in detection, leading monarchs to employ dedicated food tasters, implement elaborate rituals around food preparation, and live in constant suspicion of those around them. This pervasive threat fostered an environment of extreme paranoia, where loyalty was constantly tested, and even close family members or trusted advisors were viewed as potential conspirators, reflecting a brutal reality where the most intimate acts of daily life became fraught with existential danger. Historians still widely debate the precise efficacy of ancient food tasters in detecting sophisticated poisons, and whether the psychological impact of such elaborate precautions exacerbated the paranoia of rulers or provided a genuine, if limited, sense of security in the face of widespread courtly intrigue. Imagine yourself then a Roman emperor, perhaps Claudius, sitting at a lavish banquet in your domus aurea, akin to a modern-day president dining in the White House, accustomed to highly trained chefs, secure ingredient sourcing, and discreet security. As a plate of your favorite mushrooms is brought before you, you don't reach for it immediately. Instead, your eyes flick to the food taster, a designated individual whose grim job is to take the first bite of every dish and every sip of every drink intended for you. You watch intently as they chew, swallow, and then wait, often for several agonizing minutes. You scrutinize their face for any sign of discomfort, any sudden pallor, any twitch that might indicate a slow, agonizing death is beginning within them. Only when they give the all clear, perhaps after a mandated period of observation, do you dare to touch your own food. This wasn't a quaint tradition. It was a desperate measure of self-preservation in a world where a misplaced berry or a subtly added powder could end your reign and your life. And remember, ancient poisons were often slow-acting, designed to mimic natural illness, prolonging the agony and obscuring the crime. It truly sucked to rely on someone else's death to ensure your own dinner was safe. The very act of eating, a basic human need and often a social pleasure, was transformed into a terrifying gamble for ancient royalty. Many a ruler met their demise at the dinner table, a chilling testament to the effectiveness of poison as a stealthy weapon of power. This wasn't the discreet protection of a modern-day Secret Service agent, who would have already vetted every ingredient and every chef in a high-security kitchen in, say, Camp David, Maryland. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable biological peril. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about palace of poisons and plots is the curious phenomenon of ancient Persian kings drinking only from sacred, sealed wells during their travels to avoid poisoning. Where, in the vast Achaemenid Persian Empire, the great kings, understanding the omnipresent threat of assassination by poison, would often refuse to drink water from any local sources when on military campaigns or royal tours. Instead, a specialized unit of their entourage was responsible for transporting sealed flasks of water, drawn only from the purest, sacred wells of Persia, ensuring that their hydration was entirely untainted, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of religious ritual and the deeply disturbing lengths to which rulers would go to protect themselves from an invisible enemy in their most basic necessities. Imagine yourself refusing water on a scorching desert march, waiting instead for a sealed flask of water from a distant, sacred spring, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be that thirsty, but safe. Consider also the job of a royal spy master, or an ear to the wall, in an ancient Chinese imperial court. Akin to a diligent modern head of counterintelligence from an agency in, say, McLean, Virginia, accustomed to sophisticated surveillance technology and complex intelligence networks. Your work is to ferret out plots and conspiracies before they can materialize. This means cultivating a vast network of informants among palace eunuchs, concubines, officials, and even family members. You live in a world of whispers, coded messages, and veiled threats. You must identify who is truly loyal, who is ambitious, and who is actively plotting against the emperor. The consequences of failure are immediate and severe torture, execution, or the decimation of your entire family. The sheer psychological burden of knowing that any misjudgment could lead to your own demise, and that you must constantly betray others to protect your emperor and yourself, is immense. This profound web of deceit and suspicion was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of data breaches with modern encryption and secure communication channels in a brightly lit modern command center in, say, suburban Fort Meade, Maryland. Historians still widely debate the precise extent to which imperial Chinese eunuchs, despite their often marginalized social status, wielded immense power through their control of court intelligence and personal access to the emperor, and whether their unique position sometimes allowed them to become the most formidable, albeit hidden, conspirators themselves. Then there was the ever-present threat of a palace coup from within the inner sanctum of trusted advisors or family. Imagine yourself as a queen regent, perhaps Agrippina the Younger in Rome, fiercely protecting your young son, Nero, and his claim to the throne. Your job is to navigate a treacherous court where every noble, every general, every senator could be a rival for influence, trying to undermine your position or seize power for themselves. You must constantly form alliances, manage shifting loyalties, and be prepared to eliminate rivals, often through poisoning or forced suicides, before they can act against you. You sleep with one eye open, knowing that even your closest confidants could turn on you. The lavishness of the palace, the endless flow of sycophants, all serve to mask the deadly game of political chess being played every single day. It truly sucked to live in a gilded cage of enemies. This wasn't theoretical. It was a recurrent pattern throughout ancient and medieval royal history. Countless regents, empresses, and powerful ministers met violent ends, highlighting the ultimate fragility of their influence, even when seemingly at the peak of their power. The very source of their authority could, and often did, become the instrument of their destruction. This wasn't the structured oversight of a modern democratic cabinet, with transparent policy debates and public accountability in, say, the Parliament of Canada in Ottawa. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable political backstabbing. Even the job of raising royal children became fraught with danger. Imagine yourself as a nursemaid or tutor to an ancient prince or princess, perhaps in a volatile kingdom in ancient Persia. Your job is to care for and educate a child who is simultaneously immensely privileged and immensely vulnerable. The child's very existence is a political pawn. You are constantly on guard against kidnappings, accidental poisonings which could be blamed on you, or deliberate assassinations targeting the heir. You witness the constant fear and suspicion that even young royals are taught to live with, learning at a tender age that their playmates could be spies and their nannies could be agents of a rival faction. Your loyalty is constantly scrutinized, and any perceived lapse could lead to your own torture or death. It truly sucked to care for a royal child. The jobs within the ancient royal courts, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about wielding power. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle for survival against insidious internal threats. The constant paranoia of poisoning, the hidden network of spies, the perpetual threat of palace coups, and the heartbreaking vulnerability of even royal children all were terrifying harbingers of dubious longevity. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their lives within the palace walls were not just periods of governance. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, existential menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly vulnerable figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more precarious and filled with greater anxiety than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, far from guaranteeing peace or security, often created a gilded cage of paranoia and fear, where even the simplest act of eating or sleeping was fraught with deadly peril. They make us appreciate the stability of modern food safety regulations, the accountability of intelligence agencies, and the relative security of our leaders, and the profound comfort of knowing that our meals are safe, and our trust in our closest associates is not constantly a matter of life and death. Let's gently return from the grim reality of Palace of Poisons and Plots, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of paranoid emperors scrutinizing food tasters and the endless, chilling web of courtly espionage. If Chapter 2 exposed the insidious internal threats to royal survival, tonight we'll delve into an even more profound, often heartbreaking aspect of their suffering. Weddings of woe, heirs of anguish. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how love, family, and personal choice were systematically crushed under the immense weight of political necessity in ancient royal houses. Contemplating how individuals, from young princesses to powerful kings, faced the chilling prospect of forced marriages, brutal dynastic pressures, and the tragic loss of individual happiness for the sake of the crown, transforming every royal wedding into a cold political calculation and every royal nursery into a breeding ground for future power struggles. And revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of dynastic security often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar betrothal a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, a young prince or princess in an ancient kingdom, perhaps akin to a diligent modern relationship counselor from a bustling practice in, say, Los Angeles, California, accustomed to advocating for individual autonomy and emotional fulfillment in marriage. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2. And now you face the relentless, crushing demands of your predetermined future, where your personal desires are utterly irrelevant. There are no dating apps, no prenuptial agreements focused on individual assets, no concept of consensual relationships, no right to choose your partner, and certainly no expectation of romantic love, as found in a modern democratic society like, say, contemporary New York City. Instead, you witness or are subjected to cold negotiations, forced unions with strangers for political gain, and the immense pressure to produce heirs, regardless of personal compatibility or affection, every moment fraught with the risk of personal misery, dynastic feuds, or the terrifying obligation to continue a bloodline at any cost. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed system of modern romantic relationships. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of love, family, and individual freedom. Consider yourself a nervous princess, being presented to a foreign king twice your age for a political marriage. Feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine a lifetime with a stranger in a foreign land, knowing that your personal happiness is utterly irrelevant to the stability of your kingdom, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless arranged marriages and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned family therapist, studying historical accounts of ancient royal family dynamics in, say, the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, recognizing the detached efficiency with which incestuous marriages were used to consolidate power, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient dynastic pressures. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of marital discord with modern premarital counseling and divorce laws in a brightly lit modern suburban home in, say, suburban Boston, Massachusetts, the hushed whispers of diplomatic negotiations. Once a gentle murmur of statecraft, now mingle with the chilling sounds of forced vows and desperate pleas, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate power often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on forced unions and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of weddings of woe, heirs of anguish, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every personal relationship into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for dynastic survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar betrothal a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a royal wedding today, you probably picture a fairy tale ceremony, a global media event, and a celebration of love between two individuals. But for much of ancient history, a royal wedding was a grim political transaction, a cold calculation of alliances, territory, and future heirs, with little to no regard for the feelings or desires of the individuals involved. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, focusing on the chilling reality of weddings of woe, heirs of anguish. A common historical truth is that royal marriages in antiquity were almost exclusively political arrangements, designed to forge alliances, consolidate power, expand territory, or secure dynastic succession, with personal affection being a rare and often irrelevant consideration. Princes and princesses were often betrothed from childhood to complete strangers, frequently from foreign lands or even close relatives, including siblings in some dynasties like the Ptolemaic Egyptians, enduring lifetimes of forced cohabitation, loneliness, or even open hostility with their spouses. Reflecting a brutal reality where their bodies and futures were mere instruments of statecraft, and their primary job was to produce legitimate heirs to continue the bloodline, regardless of personal happiness. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological coping mechanisms employed by ancient royals to endure these loveless and often hostile unions, and whether the pervasive lack of personal choice in marriage contributed to increased rates of mental health issues, infidelity, or covert resistance among the elite. Imagine yourself, then, a young princess. Perhaps Cleopatra Selene II, daughter of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, betrothed at a tender age to a king you've never met from a distant kingdom like Numidia, akin to a diligent modern career woman from a bustling city like San Francisco. California, accustomed to choosing her own path, her own partner, and building a life based on personal ambition. Your wedding is not a joyous occasion. It's a political exchange. You are a pawn in a grand game of empires, traded for peace, for resources, or for military support. You leave behind everything familiar, your family, your culture, your language, to live in a foreign court among strangers. Your husband might be much older, cruel, or simply disinterested. Your primary purpose is to bear children, specifically male heirs, to secure the alliance. Failure to produce a healthy son could lead to your repudiation, your banishment, or even worse, your death, as your family would no longer be useful. You learn to hide your true feelings, to navigate treacherous court politics, remember Chapter 2 and the poisons, and to endure a life devoid of genuine affection or personal choice. It truly sucked to be a royal bride. These political marriages often involved vast dowries and complex treaties, making the individuals involved feel less like human beings and more like valuable commodities. The concept of marrying for love was a fantasy, a luxury reserved for commoners, and even then, often limited by social class. For royalty, it was a dangerous sentiment that could undermine the stability of the realm. This wasn't the celebrated union of a modern diplomatic marriage between two consenting adults from different cultures, with premarital counseling and cultural exchange programs in, say, a brightly lit modern embassy in London, England. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter inescapable emotional deprivation, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about weddings of woe. Heirs of anguish is the curious phenomenon of ancient Egyptian pharaohs marrying their sisters or daughters to maintain perceived divine purity and dynastic legitimacy. Where, in the New Kingdom of Egypt particularly, pharaohs would often take their full sisters or even their daughters as principal wives. This practice, deemed incestuous by most cultures, was believed to preserve the purity of the divine royal bloodline, as pharaohs were considered living gods, and to consolidate power within the royal family, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of religious dogma and the deeply disturbing willingness to embrace practices considered taboo for the sake of perceived sacred authority. Imagine yourself being told you must marry your own sibling to secure the throne, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to uphold divine purity this way. Consider also the job of a royal consort who fails to produce a male heir. Perhaps a queen in a succession-obsessed medieval European kingdom, akin to a diligent modern fertility specialist from a cutting-edge clinic in, say, Boston, Massachusetts, accustomed to medical advancements and empathetic patient care. Your work is to provide a son, a direct male line to continue the dynasty. If you produce only daughters, or worse, no children at all, your position becomes incredibly precarious. You are subject to immense pressure, often from the king himself, his advisors, and the entire court. You might endure countless agonizing miscarriages, stillbirths, or the heartbreak of losing infant children, all while knowing that your failure to deliver a healthy boy puts your life, your reputation, and your family standing at risk. Your husband might take multiple mistresses or even divorce you, potentially sending you to a convent or placing you under house arrest, or even executing you for treason or witchcraft if desperation set in. Your worth is measured solely by your womb. This profound existential threat due to biological circumstances was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of infertility with modern reproductive technologies and supportive counseling in a brightly lit modern medical center in, say, suburban San Diego, California. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of widespread infant mortality and the pressure for male heirs on ancient royal women's health and psychological well-being, and whether the constant cycles of pregnancy, childbirth, and potential loss contributed to chronic depression or other mental health challenges among queens and consorts. Then there was the burden of raising heirs in a dangerous court. Imagine yourself as a king, perhaps King Herod the Great of Judea, known for his paranoia and ruthlessness. Your job is not just to father children, but to ensure they survive the endless plots and rivalries within your own family. Remember Chapter 2, and the poisons and spies. You might view your own sons as potential threats, leading to fratricide. Herod famously executed several of his own sons due to suspicions of treason. You are constantly balancing the need for an heir with the fear of usurpation. You might send your children away for their own safety, or keep them close, but under constant surveillance. The warmth of a typical family bond is often replaced by suspicion and political calculation. Your children are not just your offspring, they are instruments of your power, and potentially, your downfall. It truly sucked to be a paranoid royal parent. This wasn't theoretical. The historical record is full of royal families tearing themselves apart over succession. From the brutal purges in the Roman Empire to the fratricidal conflicts in ancient China, the struggle for the throne often turned brother against brother and father against son. The very source of dynastic continuity became a wellspring of profound sorrow and violence. This wasn't the structured inheritance planning of a modern family business, with clear succession plans and wealth management strategies in, say, a sophisticated financial firm in New York City. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable familial betrayal. Even the job of a royal child, growing up under this immense pressure, and it was filled with anguish. Imagine a young prince being educated not just in statecraft and warfare, but in the art of political survival. Understanding from a tender age that his own siblings could be his deadliest rivals. He might be forced to marry a princess he despises, or worse, to see his beloved mother or sister banished or executed for political reasons. His childhood is stolen by duty and danger. He carries the weight of an entire dynasty on his young shoulders, with every action scrutinized and every weakness exploited. The very notion of a carefree youth, a fundamental expectation in modern society, was completely alien to them. It truly sucked to be a royal child. The jobs associated with ancient royal marriages and the production of heirs, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about securing lineage. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against emotional suppression and profound personal sacrifice. The forced unions, The intense pressure for male offspring, the constant threat of repudiation, and the heartbreaking family betrayals all were terrifying harbingers of dubious dynastic stability, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their relationships were not just personal bonds, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every interaction, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, emotional menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly vulnerable figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more devoid of personal happiness and emotional fulfillment than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, far from guaranteeing joy or love, often created a gilded cage of political calculation and familial anguish, where the most intimate acts of human connection were distorted into instruments of statecraft. They make us appreciate the freedom to choose our own partners, the importance of love and mutual respect in marriage, and the inherent value of every child, regardless of gender, and the profound comfort of knowing that our unions are ideally based on affection, not on cold, ruthless calculations of power and succession. Let's gently return from the grim reality of weddings of woe, heirs of anguish, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of princesses as political pawns and the brutal pressure to produce male heirs. If Chapter 3 exposed the systematic crushing of personal happiness in royal relationships, tonight we'll delve into an even more profound and existential burden: divine right, earthly agony. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how ancient monarchs, often considered gods or chosen by them, were simultaneously held accountable for every natural disaster, plague, and famine that befell their people. Contemplating how individuals at the pinnacle of power faced the chilling prospect of divine wrath, public outrage, and the immense psychological burden of collective suffering, transforming every drought into a personal failing and every epidemic into a sign of divine displeasure, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of ultimate legitimacy often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar ritual a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an ancient monarch revered as a living god or divine representative, perhaps akin to a diligent modern meteorologist from a national weather service in, say, Norman, Oklahoma, accustomed to advanced forecasting models and clear scientific explanations for natural phenomena. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2. The crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3. And now you face the relentless, often terrifying, responsibility for forces entirely beyond your control. There are no scientific explanations for crop failures, no public health agencies to combat disease, no international aid organizations for famine relief, and certainly no concept of acts of God that absolve you of responsibility, as found in a modern democratic society like, say, contemporary Washington, D.C. Instead, you witness or are subjected to the abject suffering of your people from floods, droughts, or epidemics, and are held personally and divinely accountable for these calamities, often requiring desperate rituals, human sacrifices, or public displays of penance to appease angry deities. Every moment fraught with the risk of losing divine favor, triggering popular revolt, or facing the terrifying psychological burden of believing you have personally failed your gods and your people. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern governance, where leaders address crises with scientific data and emergency response plans. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of power, responsibility, and the arbitrary nature of fate. Consider yourself a nervous pharaoh, watching the Nile fail to flood for a second consecutive year, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the coming famine, knowing that your people believe this is a sign of your divine disfavor, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless divine responsibility and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned epidemiologist studying historical accounts of ancient plagues in, say, Athens, Greece, recognizing the detached efficiency with which entire populations were decimated and leaders were blamed, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient divine mandate. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of climate change with modern scientific consensus and international policy agreements in a brightly lit modern research institute in, say, suburban Boulder, Colorado, the hushed whispers of suffering, once a gentle murmur of complaint, now mingle with the chilling sounds of desperate prayers and dying coughs, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal failure, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world, where the pursuit of ultimate legitimacy often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on supernatural blame and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of divine right, earthly agony, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every natural event into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar ritual a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a modern leader, you likely think of someone accountable to a constitution, perhaps facing public opinion polls and certainly not responsible for the weather or the spread of disease. But for many ancient monarchs, especially those ruling by divine right, their very claim to the throne was intertwined with the prosperity and well-being of their kingdom. If crops failed, if plagues swept through the land, if a volcano erupted, it wasn't just bad luck. It was often seen as a direct sign of the monarch's disfavor with the gods, or even their personal failings. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, focusing on the chilling reality of divine right, earthly agony. A common historical truth is that ancient monarchs, particularly in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and some East Asian dynasties, were often considered divine beings or divinely chosen intermediaries, holding direct responsibility for the fertility of the land, the health of the populace, and the overall prosperity of their realm. Consequently, natural disasters like famines, floods, or epidemics were frequently interpreted as signs of divine displeasure with the ruler, leading to immense psychological pressure, public rituals of atonement, and occasionally even the deposition or ritual sacrifice of the monarch to appease angry deities, reflecting a brutal reality where the spiritual and political fates of entire nations rested precariously on the perceived favor of the gods with their single leader. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological coping mechanisms employed by ancient monarchs to internalize this immense and often irrational responsibility, and whether their often documented religious devotion or grand building projects were primarily acts of genuine piety or desperate attempts to publicly demonstrate divine favor and secure their precarious positions. Imagine yourself, then, an ancient Mesopotamian king, perhaps ruling a city-state like during a prolonged drought, akin to a diligent modern agricultural scientist from a well-funded research university in, say, Davis, California, accustomed to genetic engineering and sustainable farming practices. Your job is not just to govern, but to ensure the bounty of the land. The sun beats down relentlessly, baking the earth into cracked clay. The canals are dry, the crops wither, and your people face starvation. Every day, you conduct elaborate rituals, sacrificing animals, praying to the storm gods, begging for rain. Your priests tell you that the gods are angry, and it must be your fault, your sin, your impurity that has brought this suffering upon the land. The murmurs among your starving populace grow louder. They begin to question your divine connection, your right to rule. You might offer your own child as a sacrifice, or embark on a grueling pilgrimage, all in a desperate attempt to bring the rains back and save your people and your throne. It truly sucked to be blamed for the weather. This wasn't just a political crisis, it was an existential one. The very legitimacy of your rule, the stability of your entire society, depended on your ability to maintain a favorable relationship with the unpredictable forces of nature, interpreted through the lens of divine will. If the gods abandoned you, so too might your people. This wasn't the data-driven decision-making of a modern government responding to a climate crisis. With satellite imagery and international aid efforts in, say, the United Nations building in New York City. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable cosmic blame, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about divine right. Earthly agony is the curious phenomenon of ancient Chinese emperors performing elaborate rain dances and living in humble austerity during droughts, where, when faced with severe droughts or famines, some Chinese emperors, despite their immense power, would publicly demonstrate their humility and sorrow by living in austere conditions, wearing simple clothes, abstaining from meat, and personally performing intricate rain rituals in designated temples or altars. This was done not just to appease the heavens, but to show their people they shared in their suffering and were earnestly trying to restore divine harmony, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of political performance and the deeply disturbing burden of personal responsibility for forces entirely beyond human control. Imagine yourself the son of heaven, sleeping on a straw mat and eating plain rice, while tens of thousands starve. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be so powerful yet so powerless against nature. Consider also the job of a monarch facing a devastating plague. Perhaps an emperor in the Byzantine Empire during the plague of Justinian, remember chapter 2, and the horrors of ancient medicine. Your job is to lead your people through a terrifying epidemic that decimates cities. With no scientific understanding of its cause or cure, the streets are filled with the dead and dying. The air thick with the stench of sickness recalled the pervasive urban squalor from chapter 3 of our previous series. Your priests declare it God's wrath, a punishment for the sins of the empire, and implicitly, for your own failings as a divine ruler. You might order mass prayers, public confessions, or even persecute minority groups, believing they are the cause of divine anger. You watch your family members, your advisors, your loyal subjects fall ill and die, knowing there is absolutely nothing you can do. The sheer helplessness, coupled with the crushing weight of divine blame, would be an unbearable psychological torment. This profound existential threat from an invisible enemy was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of global pandemics with modern vaccines. Advanced medical research and international public health organizations in a brightly lit modern laboratory in, say, suburban Atlanta, Georgia. Historians still widely debate the precise extent to which ancient religious explanations for natural disasters and diseases reinforced or undermined the authority of monarchs, and whether the perceived failure of a ruler to appease the gods sometimes served as a convenient justification for rebellions or dynastic changes. Then there was the burden of maintaining a cosmic balance. Imagine yourself as a Mesoamerican king, perhaps a ruler of the Maya or Aztec Empire. Your job is to ensure the sun rises each day, that the seasons change, and that the cosmic order is preserved through elaborate rituals and, often, human sacrifice. You are the direct link between your people and the heavens, responsible for performing bloodletting rituals, overseeing sacred ceremonies, and providing the gods with the human hearts they demand to keep the universe functioning. The immense pressure to ensure these rituals are performed perfectly, to select the right victims, and to maintain the favor of powerful, demanding deities is terrifying. A misstep could mean the end of the world, or at least the end of your rule and the destruction of your people by an angry cosmos. It truly sucked to be responsible for the sun. This wasn't just about leadership, it was about cosmic guardianship. The king's very being was tied to the functioning of the universe, creating an unimaginable burden of responsibility. The consequences of failure were not merely political, but apocalyptic. This wasn't the structured governance of a modern secular state, where leaders focus on economic stability and social welfare, guided by scientific principles in, say, a modern capital city like Mexico City. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable cosmic dread. Even the job of warfare could be seen as a divine test. Imagine yourself as a warrior king, leading your armies into battle against a powerful foe. Remember Chapter 5 and the perils of ancient travel for soldiers. If you are victorious, it is a sign of divine favor, reinforcing your legitimacy. But if you suffer a crushing defeat, if your army is decimated, it could be interpreted as the gods abandoning you, a sign of your unworthiness to rule. This belief meant that military defeats were not just strategic setbacks, they were personal humiliations, divine judgments that could swiftly lead to your overthrow, or even your ritual sacrifice to restore order. The pressure to win, to constantly prove your divine favor through military success, was immense, transforming every battle into a life-or-death test of your spiritual standing. It truly sucked to lose a divinely sanctioned war. The jobs of ancient royalty, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about wielding power, they were about a relentless, terrifying struggle to maintain divine favor and prevent cosmic or earthly calamity. The crushing responsibility for natural disasters, the burden of appeasing angry gods, the terrifying necessity of human sacrifice, and the existential weight of military defeat all were terrifying harbingers of dubious legitimacy. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their reigns were not just periods of governance. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every command, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt divine menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly burdened figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more precarious and filled with greater existential dread than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when intertwined with divine mandate and primitive understanding, created a gilded cage of responsibility and cosmic blame, where the well-being of an entire nation rested precariously on the shoulders of one fallible human. They make us appreciate the clarity of scientific understanding, the separation of church and state, and the shared responsibility for addressing societal crises in the modern world, and the profound comfort of knowing that our leaders, however imperfect, are not held personally accountable for the whims of nature or the wrath of unseen gods. Let's gently return from the grim reality of divine right. Earthly agony, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of pharaohs blamed for droughts and kings performing human sacrifices. If Chapter 4 exposed the existential burden of divine responsibility, tonight we'll delve into an equally terrifying, yet more physically tangible aspect of royal life battles beyond the throne room. We're going to explore the stark, often utterly brutal, reality of how ancient monarchs, far from being insulated from conflict, were frequently expected to lead their armies into the brutal chaos of battle, contemplating how individuals at the pinnacle of power face the chilling prospect of personal injury, capture, or a gruesome death on the battlefield, transforming every campaign into a desperate gamble for survival and every victory into a blood-soaked testament to their personal risk, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of martial glory and territorial expansion often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar charge a testament to their desperate desire for control and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an ancient monarch leading your army into battle, perhaps akin to a diligent modern military strategist from a prestigious war college in, say, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, accustomed to drone warfare, satellite intelligence, and strict rules of engagement. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2. The crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3. The existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4. And now you face the immediate visceral terror of a medieval battlefield. There are no bulletproof vests, no medevac helicopters, no Geneva Conventions, no concept of a safe zone for commanders, and certainly no expectation of returning home unscathed, as found in a modern military campaign in, say, contemporary Afghanistan. Instead, you witness or are constantly engaged in hand-to-hand combat, facing a hail of arrows, the crush of charging cavalry, or the terrifying prospect of being captured alive by a vengeful enemy. Every moment fraught with the risk of dismemberment, grievous wounds, or immediate death. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern warfare. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of personal safety and the true cost of leadership. Consider yourself a nervous king, mounted on your warhorse, seeing the enemy ranks charging towards you, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the clash of steel and the cries of the dying, knowing that your life is just as expendable as your lowliest soldiers, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless combat and profound despair. Or perhaps a concerned conflict historian, studying historical accounts of ancient battles in, say, Cannae, Italy, recognizing the detached efficiency with which entire armies, including their leaders, were annihilated, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient warfare. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of military budget cuts with modern defense spending debates and diplomatic negotiations in a brightly lit modern Pentagon office in, say, suburban Arlington, Virginia, the hushed whispers of battle plans. Once a gentle murmur of strategy, now mingle with the chilling sounds of clashing swords and desperate roars. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal injury. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate victory often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of battles beyond the throne room, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every military campaign into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar charge a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of ancient royalty in battle, you might picture them observing from a safe distance, commanding legions with a wave of their hand, or perhaps engaging in highly stylized duels for honor. But for many ancient monarchs, especially in eras before gunpowder and long-range weaponry, personal presence and direct leadership on the battlefield were not just expected, they were essential. Kings, emperors, and chieftains fought alongside their men, exposing themselves to the same dangers, the same grime, and the same terrifying prospects of death or capture. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, focusing on the chilling reality of battles beyond the throne room. A common historical truth is that ancient monarchs and high-ranking nobles frequently led their armies directly into battle, often fighting in the front lines or at the vanguard of their forces, necessitating personal bravery and combat prowess as crucial aspects of their leadership and legitimacy. This direct involvement exposed them to immense physical danger, including severe injury, capture, or death, a stark contrast to modern military command structures where leaders rarely engage in direct combat, reflecting a brutal reality where the king's courage and skill at arms were often as vital as his strategic acumen, and his life was as expendable as any soldier's. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological impact of such direct and constant exposure to combat on ancient rulers, and whether their often documented ruthlessness or stoicism was a result of inherent personality traits or a necessary adaptation to the brutal realities of their leadership. Imagine yourself, then, a Celtic chieftain leading your warriors into a desperate charge against a Roman legion. Perhaps in ancient Gaul, akin to a diligent modern general from a prestigious military academy in, say, West Point, New York. Accustomed to commanding highly trained units with advanced weaponry, you wear elaborate war paint, maybe a fearsome boar's helmet. But beneath it, your heart pounds with raw terror and desperate resolve. You are not observing from a tent. You are at the very front, shouting commands, swinging your sword, and parrying blows. The air is thick with the clang of steel, the thud of bodies, and the screams of the dying. You dodge a Roman pilum javelin that whistles past your ear, narrowly avoid a legionary's thrust with his gladius short sword yen, and feel the impact of a shield bash. Your life is not protected by an elite guard unit or advanced body armor. You are as vulnerable as any of your warriors. A single lucky strike from an enemy soldier, a misstep that leaves you exposed, and your reign ends not on a gilded throne, but in the mud and blood of the battlefield. It truly sucked to be a warrior king. This wasn't just about inspiring your troops. It was about leading by example, about proving your worthiness to rule through personal courage and martial skill. A king who shrank from battle was a king who quickly lost the respect of his men and the loyalty of his people. This wasn't the strategic oversight of a modern general in a secure command center, monitoring battlefields via drones and satellite feeds in, say, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable physical peril. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about battles beyond the throne room is the curious phenomenon of ancient Egyptian pharaohs riding into battle in glorified chariots, sometimes almost as mobile, highly visible targets, where, despite their immense power and divine status, pharaohs like Ramses II often led their armies from highly decorated war chariots, placing themselves in a position of both supreme command and extreme vulnerability. These chariots, while offering speed and an elevated vantage point, also made the pharaoh a prime, conspicuous target for enemy archers or skirmishers, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of ceremonial leadership and the deeply disturbing willingness to embrace direct, personal danger for the sake of inspiring troops. Imagine yourself, standing tall in a moving chariot, a glittering target for every arrow, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers they invited daily. It truly sucked to be such a visible target. Consider also the job of a besieged monarch, perhaps a king defending his capital city during a prolonged siege in medieval Europe, akin to a diligent modern commander overseeing urban warfare from a protected bunker in, say, a fortified military base in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Your work involves organizing the defense of your city walls, rallying your starving populace, and personally leading sorties against the enemy. You are exposed to enemy catapult fire, the stench of disease from overcrowded conditions, remember, Chapter 3 of our previous series, and the constant threat of your walls being breached. You walk the ramparts, inspecting defenses, your armor clanking, a constant target for enemy archers. You lead counterattacks, fighting hand-to-hand in the narrow streets or over the crumbling walls. The psychological toll of watching your city starve, your people suffer, and your defenses crumble under relentless assault is immense, all while knowing that capture would likely mean a brutal, humiliating death, and that surrender could mean the enslavement of your entire population. This profound existential threat to your kingdom and your life was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of urban combat with modern drone surveillance and precise missile strikes in a brightly lit modern war room in, say, suburban Washington, D.C. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of a monarch's personal presence and perceived bravery during sieges on the morale and fighting effectiveness of their besieged forces, and whether the strategic risks associated with such direct involvement often outweighed the potential benefits of inspiring their troops through personal example. Then there was the terrifying prospect of capture. Imagine yourself as a king, perhaps King Francis I of France, captured by the forces of his rival, Emperor Charles V at the Battle of Pavia in 1525. Your job is not just to fight, but to avoid the ultimate humiliation becoming a prisoner of war. If you are captured, you are at the mercy of your enemy. You could be ransomed for an exorbitant sum, forcing your kingdom into ruin. You could be tortured for information, publicly paraded as a trophy, or subjected to years of imprisonment in a damp, cold dungeon. Remember Chapter 9 and the grim realities of ancient prisons. Your very life hangs on the whim of your captor. The psychological torment of knowing your fate is entirely out of your hands, and that your capture could lead to the collapse of your dynasty, is an unbearable burden. It truly sucked to be a captured king. This wasn't theoretical. Numerous ancient and medieval kings, emperors, and warlords suffered the humiliation of capture, profoundly impacting their personal lives and the destinies of their kingdoms. Their personal freedom, once absolute, vanished in an instant. This wasn't the regulated exchange of prisoners of war in a modern conflict, governed by international conventions and diplomatic negotiations in, say, the International Committee of the Red Cross headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable personal subjugation. Even the job of reclaiming lost territory was a perilous one. Imagine a king who has suffered a humiliating defeat, losing a vital province. Your job is to rally your remaining forces, secure new alliances, and lead a dangerous counter-campaign to reclaim what was lost. This often meant marching through hostile territory, facing guerrilla warfare, or confronting a confident, victorious enemy. The stakes were incredibly high. Failure meant permanent loss of prestige and power, possibly even the end of your dynasty. The physical exertion, the mental strain, and the constant threat of renewed battle were immense, transforming leadership into an endless, brutal grind. It truly sucked to be on the losing side of history. The jobs of ancient royalty on the battlefield, beneath the glittering armor, were not just about wielding power, they were about a relentless, terrifying struggle for survival, legitimacy, and the very existence of their kingdom. The personal exposure to combat, the terrifying prospect of siege, the humiliation of capture, and the relentless drive to reclaim lost glory all were terrifying harbingers of dubious victory. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their campaigns were not just strategic maneuvers, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every command, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen yet deeply felt military menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly vulnerable of figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more precarious and filled with greater physical danger than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when intertwined with martial necessity and primitive warfare, created a gilded cage of combat and existential threat, where the king's very life was often on the line. They make us appreciate the evolution of modern military strategy, the protection afforded to contemporary leaders, and the increasing reliance on diplomacy over direct conflict, and the profound comfort of knowing that our leaders, however imperfect, do not typically don armor and personally charge into the fray, risking their lives for every skirmish. Let's gently return from the grim reality of battles beyond the throne room. Where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of pharaohs as chariot targets and kings fighting hand-to-hand in sieges. If Chapter 5 exposed the terrifying physical dangers of royal combat, tonight we'll delve into a more subtle, yet equally pervasive form of royal misery. The golden cage of etiquette. We're going to explore the stark, often dehumanizing, reality of how ancient monarchs, despite their absolute power, were frequently prisoners of rigid courtly protocols, endless rituals, and suffocating public performance. Contemplating how individuals at the pinnacle of society face the chilling prospect of constant scrutiny, emotional suppression, and the tragic loss of personal freedom. Transforming every meal into a meticulously choreographed spectacle and every private moment into a potential breach of decorum, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of ultimate legitimacy often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar gesture a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now an ancient monarch, perhaps akin to a diligent modern celebrity from a bustling city like Los Angeles, California, accustomed to public appearances and managed media interactions, but still possessing a realm of private life. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series, the pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2, the crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3, the existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4, the terrifying physical dangers of battle from Chapter 5, and now you face the relentless, suffocating demands of royal protocol. There are no casual Fridays, no quiet nights in with a good book, no spontaneous decisions, and certainly no concept of me time or personal boundaries. As found in a modern society where even public figures have some degree of privacy, instead, you witness or are constantly subjected to endless ceremonies. Strict rules of address, rigid dining rituals, and an expectation that your every move is a public performance. All under the scrutinizing gaze of thousands, every moment fraught with the risk of social faux pas, perceived disrespect, or the immense psychological burden of living a life that is never truly your own. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern public relations or celebrity management. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of personal freedom and individuality. Consider yourself a nervous emperor, forced to participate in a tedious, hours-long religious ceremony, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the thousands of eyes watching your every gesture, knowing that one wrong move could be interpreted as a bad omen or a sign of weakness, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless ritual and profound despair? Or perhaps a concerned sociologist, studying historical accounts of ancient courtly life in, say, Versailles, France, recognizing the detached efficiency with which human interaction was codified and controlled, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient royal etiquette. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of public speaking with modern media training and personal branding consultants in a brightly lit modern office in, Say, suburban Washington, D.C., the hushed whispers of courtly protocol, once a gentle murmur of tradition, now mingle with the chilling sounds of enforced silence and desperate conformity. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate legitimacy often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on performative existence and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of the golden cage of etiquette, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every personal interaction into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for dynastic survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar gesture a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of absolute power, you likely imagine the freedom to do whatever you please, unconstrained by rules. But for many ancient monarchs, especially in highly ceremonial courts, their lives were paradoxically dictated by an almost suffocating web of etiquette, ritual, and public performance. Every gesture, every word, every meal, every movement was prescribed, observed, and interpreted, leaving little room for genuine spontaneity or personal expression. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more. Focusing on the chilling reality of the golden cage of etiquette, a common historical truth is that many ancient royal courts, particularly those in imperial China, the Byzantine Empire, and later European monarchies like those of Louis XIV of France, developed incredibly elaborate and rigid systems of etiquette and ritual that governed every aspect of the monarch's daily life. These protocols, designed to reinforce divine legitimacy, maintain social hierarchy, and project an image of infallible power, effectively imprisoned the monarch in a constant public performance, demanding extreme emotional discipline, sacrificing personal privacy, and often dictating everything from how they ate and slept to how they greeted their subjects, reflecting a brutal reality where their very existence became a meticulously choreographed spectacle. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological toll this constant public scrutiny and enforced emotional suppression took on individual monarchs, and whether the perceived benefits of maintaining such elaborate rituals in terms of political stability or divine favor truly outweighed the profound personal cost to the rulers. Imagine yourself, then, an emperor of China during the Tang Dynasty, living in the Forbidden City, akin to a diligent modern head of state from a democratic nation like Japan, accustomed to scheduled public appearances and carefully vetted interactions, but still able to retreat into private life. From the moment you awaken, your day is a carefully orchestrated ballet of rituals. Eunuchs and ladies-in-waiting assist with your dressing, each garment placed according to specific protocol. Your breakfast is served with prescribed movements, every dish presented in a particular order. Audiences with officials involve elaborate bows, specific phrases, and rigid seating arrangements. You cannot simply walk freely. You are carried in a sedan chair, even within the palace, to maintain your exalted status. Even intimate moments, like visiting a concubine, might be recorded or overseen by eunuchs. Your private life is virtually non-existent. You are always on display, always performing the role of the Son of Heaven. One misplaced gesture, one forgotten ritual, could be interpreted as a bad omen, a sign of disrespect, or even a weakening of your divine mandate, potentially inviting plots or rebellions. Remember chapter 1. It truly sucked to live under such constant, suffocating scrutiny. This wasn't just about pomp and circumstance. It was a fundamental tool of governance and control. The rigidity of courtly etiquette served to impress, intimidate, and manage the vast bureaucracy and rival factions within the palace. By making every interaction a ritual, it reinforced the monarch's supreme position and controlled the flow of information and access. This wasn't the managed media appearances of a modern public figure, with pre-written speeches and controlled interviews in, say, a brightly lit modern television studio in New York City. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable performative existence. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the golden cage of etiquette is the curious phenomenon of ancient Japanese emperors having their meals eaten in absentia before being presented to them. Where, in some periods of Japanese imperial history, particularly during the Heian period, the emperor's meals would be ceremonially eaten by designated court officials, often the kuroto or chamberlains in a separate room, before the food was brought to the emperor. This ritual, while ostensibly a food-tasting measure recalling Chapter 2's poisons, also served as a profound demonstration of the emperor's sacred detachment from mundane acts, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of practical precaution and the deeply disturbing lengths to which ritual could abstract a monarch from even the most basic human experiences. Imagine yourself watching others eat your food first, knowing it's a necessary part of your divine separation from humanity. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to never eat a hot meal freshly prepared. Consider also the job of a royal consort or queen in a court obsessed with rigid hierarchy. Perhaps a queen in the Byzantine Empire, akin to a diligent modern first lady from a political family in, say, Washington, D.C., accustomed to formal events and supporting her spouse's public image. Your work involves navigating a labyrinthine system of protocol where your every step, your every interaction, and even your choice of clothing is strictly dictated by tradition and your precise rank within the imperial hierarchy. You might spend hours in elaborate, uncomfortable robes, attending endless religious ceremonies or state receptions. You cannot speak freely, express personal opinions, or even choose your own companions without risking a breach of etiquette that could undermine your standing or even invite political retribution. Remember Chapter 3 and the perils of royal marriages. Your life is a constant balancing act of performing humility while projecting grandeur, often in a language that might not be your native tongue, and always under the critical gaze of rivals who seek any opportunity to exploit your mistakes. This profound suppression of individuality was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of public gaffes with modern image consultants and social media strategists in a brightly lit modern PR firm in, say, suburban Los Angeles, California. Historians still widely debate the precise ways in which ancient courtly etiquette, despite its apparent rigidity, allowed for subtle forms of political communication or personal expression through veiled gestures, symbolic clothing, or coded language, and whether truly influential figures could manipulate these very rules to their advantage without outwardly breaking them. Then there was the burden of constant public display. Imagine yourself as a European monarch, perhaps Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, whose entire life was a public spectacle at Versailles. Your job is to be perpetually visible, a living symbol of the state. The Lever du Roi, the King's Rising, and Coucher du Roi, the King's Going to Bed, were elaborate ceremonies attended by dozens, sometimes hundreds, of nobles. You ate your meals in public, attended by courtiers. Even performing basic bodily functions might have been a semi-public affair, as certain high-ranking nobles had the privilege of attending you. There was no true privacy, no escape from the relentless gaze of the court. You were a living monument, a deity, but also a prisoner of your own grandeur. The effort required to maintain this facade, to always be on, to never show weakness or fatigue, must have been utterly exhausting. It truly sucked to live in a perpetual performance. This wasn't just about being seen, it was about projecting absolute power and maintaining control through visibility. By making the king's life a public ritual, it asserted his divine authority and simultaneously kept the nobility occupied with matters of protocol rather than plotting against him. This wasn't the limited public exposure of a modern head of state, with designated press conferences and private residences in, say, the tranquil countryside of Camp David, Maryland. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable lack of personal space. Even the job of managing courtly factions through etiquette was a perilous one. Imagine a powerful regent struggling to control ambitious nobles in a fractured kingdom. Your job is to use the intricate rules of precedence, seating arrangements, and ceremonial honors to signal favor, mete out punishments, and subtly control the power dynamics of the court. A slight to a powerful noble through improper placement at a feast, or an omission from a key ceremony, could spark resentment, open defiance, or even a full-blown rebellion. You are constantly walking a tightrope, knowing that any perceived insult, however unintentional, could have devastating political consequences. The pressure to master this complex social language and to use it effectively was immense, transforming every social gathering into a high-stakes political negotiation. It truly sucked to have your seating plan be a weapon. The jobs associated with ancient royal etiquette, beneath the glittering exterior, were not just about social grace. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against personal freedom and emotional authenticity. The rigid protocols, the constant public performance, the suppression of individuality, and the high-stakes navigation of courtly factions all were terrifying harbingers of dubious personal well-being. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their lives were not just privileged existences, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every movement, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, societal menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly constrained, figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more devoid of genuine personal expression and individual freedom than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when intertwined with elaborate ritual and suffocating protocol, created a gilded cage of performative existence and emotional suppression, where the very essence of being human was often sacrificed for the sake of royal legitimacy. They make us appreciate the freedom to express ourselves, the value of personal privacy, and the ability to choose our own paths, and the profound comfort of knowing that our lives are ideally our own, not a meticulously choreographed ballet dictated by ancient, rigid rules. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the golden cage of etiquette, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of emperors never eating a fresh, hot meal and queens trapped in endless, stifling rituals. If Chapter 6 exposed the suffocating demands of royal protocol, tonight we'll delve into an equally profound, yet often overlooked source of royal misery. Royal bodies, brutal cures. We're going to explore the stark, often utterly terrifying, reality of how ancient monarchs, despite their immense wealth and access to the best available medical care, were frequently subjected to excruciating, ineffective, and often fatal treatments. Contemplating how individuals at the pinnacle of power faced the chilling prospect of crude surgeries, dangerous concoctions, and the immense psychological burden of knowing their privileged status offered no escape from primitive medicine, transforming every illness into a terrifying ordeal and every cure into a potential death sentence, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of health and longevity often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar treatment a testament to their desperate desire for survival, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, an ancient monarch suffering from a seemingly minor ailment, perhaps akin to a diligent modern patient from a bustling city like New York City. Accustomed to evidence-based medicine, sterile operating rooms, and compassionate doctors, you've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2, the crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3, the existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4, the terrifying physical dangers of battle from Chapter 5, the suffocating demands of royal protocol from Chapter 6, and now you face the immediate visceral terror of ancient medical expertise. There are no antibiotics, no anesthesia beyond perhaps a swig of strong wine or opium, no germ theory, no concept of informed consent, and certainly no expectation of a quick, painless recovery, as found in a modern hospital in, say, contemporary Boston, Massachusetts. Instead, you witness or are subjected to horrifying remedies, from bloodletting and purges to bizarre herbal concoctions and crude surgeries performed by unhygienic practitioners, every moment fraught with the risk of lethal infection, unbearable pain, or outright medical malpractice that shortens your life. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern healthcare. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of bodily autonomy and the true meaning of healing. Consider yourself a nervous emperor, suffering from a common fever, being told by your royal physician that you must undergo a drastic bloodletting, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the sharp knife and the draining blood, knowing that this cure could easily weaken you further or introduce a deadly infection, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless medical interventions and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned medical historian studying historical accounts of ancient royal autopsies in, say, ancient Rome, recognizing the detached efficiency with which royal bodies were dissected after death, often revealing the horrifying impact of their treatments, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient royal medicine. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of medical bills with modern health insurance and robust patient advocacy in a brightly lit modern hospital in, say, suburban Minneapolis, Minnesota. The hushed whispers of medical consultation, once a gentle murmur of hope, now mingle with the chilling sounds of desperate moans and pained screams, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of strange remedies and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate health often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of royal bodies, brutal cures, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal well-being, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every ailment into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting relief often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar treatment a testament to their desperate desire for survival, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of royal healthcare today, you likely imagine access to the very best specialists, cutting-edge technology, and discreet, world-class medical facilities. But for many ancient monarchs, despite their wealth and status, their medical experiences were often agonizing, dangerous, and based on theories that would make a modern doctor wince. Privilege did not equate to effective treatment. It merely meant they had access to the most dangerous and most confidently applied quackery of their time. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, focusing on the chilling reality of royal bodies, brutal cures, A common historical truth is that ancient royal medical treatments were often extremely invasive, painful, and ineffective, being based on rudimentary understandings of anatomy and disease like the humoral theory and lacking sterile practices. Effective pharmaceuticals, or anesthesia. Monarchs regularly underwent harsh procedures such as extensive bloodletting, aggressive purging, vomiting, and enemas, the application of caustic poultices, or crude surgeries for even minor ailments, frequently resulting in worsened conditions, severe infections, or premature death, reflecting a brutal reality where their privileged access to doctors often meant they were subjected to the most extreme and dangerous of the era's medical interventions. Historians still widely debate the precise mortality rates attributable directly to ancient medical practices versus the diseases themselves, and whether the perceived authority and divine right of kings sometimes made them less likely to question or refuse even the most uncomfortable or risky cures prescribed by their trusted physicians. Imagine yourself, then, an ancient Roman emperor, perhaps Augustus, suffering from a persistent digestive issue, akin to a diligent modern patient from a prestigious clinic in, say, Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic, accustomed to precise diagnostics and tailored treatment plans. Your royal physician, perhaps a Greek slave or a highly paid practitioner, approaches with a solemn expression. His diagnosis, based on the prevailing humoral theory, is that your body has an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The cure: a massive bloodletting. He orders dozens of leeches to be applied to your skin, or perhaps a vein is opened with a sharpened instrument, allowing copious amounts of your vital fluid to drain away. You feel dizzy, weak, and your skin turns pale. This is followed by powerful emetics to induce violent vomiting and purgatives to cause severe diarrhea, all designed to cleanse your system of noxious humors. These procedures are excruciatingly uncomfortable, debilitating, and often leave you weaker and more susceptible to other illnesses. And remember, the instruments are not sterile. Infection is a constant, unseen threat lurking behind every cut or puncture wound. It truly sucked to be treated by a humoral physician. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was often lethal. Many ancient rulers likely died not from their original ailments, but from the very treatments meant to save them. The concept of strengthening the body's natural defenses was alien. Instead, the focus was on aggressive interventions to expel perceived imbalances. This wasn't the targeted therapy of a modern gastrointestinal specialist. Utilizing endoscopies and microbiome research in a cutting-edge medical center in, say, Cleveland, Ohio? This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable medical assault. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about royal bodies. Brutal cures is the curious phenomenon of ancient Egyptian pharaohs consuming strange remedies made from ground animal parts and human excretions for ailments. Where, despite their advanced understanding of anatomy for mummification, some pharaonic medical texts reveal bizarre and often revolting remedies prescribed for royalty. These could include potions made from animal organs, ground insects, or even human excrement, mixed with herbs or wine, believed to possess magical or curative properties for everything from headaches to digestive issues, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of empirical observation and the deeply disturbing willingness to ingest truly disgusting substances in the desperate hope of healing. Imagine yourself, holding your nose as you swallow a concoction of dried lizard parts and donkey dung, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to take that medicine. Consider also the job of a royal surgeon in a medieval European court, perhaps attending a king wounded in battle. Remember Chapter 5 and the perils of royal combat, akin to a diligent modern trauma surgeon from a bustling emergency room in, say, Baltimore, Maryland, accustomed to advanced surgical techniques and infection control. Your work involves amputating shattered limbs with crude saws, extracting arrows or spearheads without proper anesthesia, and cauterizing wounds with red-hot irons to stop bleeding. The patient, the king, is screaming in agony, held down by strong attendants. There's no understanding of shock, no antibiotics to prevent infection, and certainly no sterile environment. You might pack wounds with dirty rags, or apply poultices of moldy bread and accidental early form of penicillin. Perhaps, but entirely unregulated and often ineffective. The king's survival often depended less on your skill and more on his sheer constitution and luck. A successful surgery was a miracle. A failed one meant you might face royal wrath or public execution. This profound exposure to agonizing pain and lethal infection was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of surgical complications with modern diagnostic imaging and rigorous post-operative care in a brightly lit modern operating theater in, say, suburban Houston, Texas. Historians still widely debate the precise extent to which ancient surgical procedures, despite their brutality, sometimes achieved positive outcomes for patients, especially in cases like setting broken bones or removing superficial tumors, and whether the resilience of the human body sometimes allowed for recovery, even in the face of rudimentary and unsanitary interventions. Then there was the burden of chronic illness with no relief. Imagine yourself as a royal figure, perhaps King George III of England, though later than ancient times. His medical struggles offer a clear parallel. Suffering from an undiagnosed chronic condition like porphyria, which caused bouts of severe mental disturbance, abdominal pain, and neurological issues. Your job is to rule, but your body and mind betray you. Your physicians, utterly baffled, resort to even more aggressive and bizarre treatments, blistering agents applied to your skin, forced restraints during your manic episodes, or even prolonged periods of being submerged in cold baths. You endure these horrors while simultaneously trying to maintain the image of a stable, divine ruler. Remember Chapter 4 in Divine Right, the shame, the confusion, and the sheer physical discomfort of living with an untreated, poorly understood illness, compounded by the terrifying cures, would be an immense psychological and physical burden. It truly sucked to be a mystery patient. This wasn't theoretical. Countless monarchs throughout history suffered from chronic, debilitating illnesses, from gout to various forms of mental illness, for which ancient medicine had no effective answers and only painful interventions. Their privilege offered no shield against disease, only more extreme and often counterproductive remedies. This wasn't the targeted medication and supportive therapy of a modern chronic illness management plan. Guided by specialists and patient support groups in, say, a comprehensive medical center in London, England. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter inescapable prolonged suffering. Even the job of maintaining royal fertility was fraught with brutal medical interventions. Imagine a queen struggling to conceive, or to carry a pregnancy to term Remember Chapter 3 and the pressure for heirs. Royal physicians might prescribe dangerous herbal concoctions, perform invasive procedures, or advise on dietary restrictions that were more superstitious than scientific, all in a desperate attempt to ensure the continuation of the royal line. The physical and emotional toll of these repeated interventions, often with little success and significant discomfort, would be immense. It truly sucked to have your body constantly experimented on for the sake of the dynasty. The jobs associated with ancient royal medicine, beneath the veneer of privilege, were not just about seeking health. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against pain, ignorance, and the arbitrary nature of disease. The excruciating treatments, the unsanitary conditions, the baffling chronic illnesses, and the desperate attempts to secure fertility all were terrifying harbingers of dubious well-being, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their bodies were not just temples of power, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every breath, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, biological menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly vulnerable figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more filled with physical suffering and medical terror than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power offered no immunity from the crude and dangerous medical practices of their time. They make us appreciate the marvels of modern medicine, the principles of hygiene, the development of effective pharmaceuticals, and the ethical standards of healthcare, and the profound comfort of knowing that our illnesses, however serious, are met with knowledge, compassion, and a genuine attempt to heal, not to harm. Let's gently return from the grim reality of royal bodies. Brutal cures, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of emperors enduring agonizing bloodletting and pharaohs swallowing bizarre animal concoctions. If Chapter 7 exposed the terrifying physical suffering inflicted by primitive medicine, tonight we'll delve into a more insidious yet equally devastating form of royal misery, the loneliness of the crown. We're going to explore the stark, often utterly dehumanizing, reality of how ancient monarchs, despite being surrounded by thousands of courtiers, guards, and supplicants, lived lives of profound emotional isolation, contemplating how individuals at the pinnacle of power face the chilling prospect of perpetual distrust. Genuine friendship being a dangerous luxury, and the immense psychological burden of knowing their every relationship was tainted by ambition, fear, or political calculation, transforming every interaction into a guarded performance and every moment of supposed triumph into a solitary burden, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of ultimate power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar interaction a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself now, an ancient monarch, perpetually on guard, perhaps akin to a diligent modern public figure from a major city like New York City, accustomed to a certain level of scrutiny, but still possessing a trusted inner circle of friends and family. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series, the pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2, the crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3, the existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4, the terrifying physical dangers of battle from Chapter 5, the suffocating demands of royal protocol from Chapter 6, the excruciating pain of ancient medicine from Chapter 7, and now you face the relentless, chilling emptiness of true isolation. There are no genuine confidants, no peers with whom you can truly empathize, no safe spaces for vulnerability, and certainly no expectation of unconditional love or loyalty, as found in a modern support system. Instead, you witness or are constantly subjected to flattery, betrayal, and the knowledge that every smile, every whispered word of advice might be a calculated move by someone seeking to gain power or undermine your authority. Every moment fraught with the risk of misjudging loyalty, experiencing profound emotional desolation, or facing the terrifying psychological burden of utter solitude at the top. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed system of modern leadership, where even presidents have close advisors they can trust. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound assault on your understanding of human connection and emotional well-being. Consider yourself a nervous emperor, surrounded by hundreds of courtiers at a grand banquet, yet feeling an overwhelming sense of loneliness, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the hidden agendas behind every smile, knowing that even your closest family members might betray you for power, your body bracing for the inevitable. Peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless solitude and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned psychologist, studying historical accounts of ancient rulers in, say, the Roman Empire, recognizing the detached efficiency with which loyalty was bought and sold, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient royal isolation. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of public criticism, with modern social media managers and supportive therapy in a brightly lit modern apartment in, say, suburban Los Angeles, California, the hushed whispers of courtly flattery, once a gentle murmur of admiration, now mingle with the chilling sounds of hidden plots and desperate pleas, the pervasive, almost palpable ascent of suspicion and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal betrayal, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate power often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on emotional detachment and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of the loneliness of the crown, where the very essence of ancient royal life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every relationship into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar interaction a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a monarch, you probably imagine them surrounded by an entourage, always accompanied, never alone. But the paradox of absolute power is often profound isolation. The higher you rise, the fewer truly equal or trustworthy companions you find. For many ancient monarchs, their lives were a chilling testament to the adage, "It's lonely at the top." Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more. Focusing on the chilling reality of the loneliness of the crown, a common historical truth is that ancient monarchs, by virtue of their supreme power and unique status, often experienced profound social and emotional isolation, surrounded by flatterers, schemers, and fearful subordinates. They rarely found genuine confidants or peers with whom they could share their true thoughts, fears, or vulnerabilities without risking betrayal, manipulation, or a perceived weakening of their authority. Reflecting a brutal reality where every relationship was tainted by political calculation, and true trust was a dangerous luxury they could ill afford, leading to chronic feelings of loneliness, paranoia, and a deep sense of separation from the rest of humanity. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological long-term effects of this pervasive isolation on individual rulers, and whether the documented instances of tyrannical behavior, erratic decisions, or deep melancholy were primarily symptoms of this unique form of power-induced loneliness, or simply manifestations of inherent personality traits exacerbated by their circumstances. Imagine yourself, then, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, perhaps Akhenaten, attempting to introduce radical religious reforms, akin to a diligent modern visionary CEO from a cutting-edge tech company in, say, Silicon Valley, California, accustomed to pitching revolutionary ideas to a receptive board. You sit in your grand new capital, Akhenaten, surrounded by thousands of subjects, but feel utterly alone. Your priests and traditional nobles resent your new monotheistic religion, whispering against you. Your military commanders feign loyalty but may be secretly plotting. Even your own family, while publicly supportive, might harbor doubts or ambitions of their own. Remember chapters 1, 2, and 3. You yearn for someone with whom you can truly share your dreams, your burdens, your fears. Someone who isn't trying to gain your favor or exploit your weaknesses. But every word you utter, every emotion you show, is immediately scrutinized, reported, and potentially twisted against you. You are the divine ruler, yet you are utterly human in your need for connection. A need that is constantly denied by the very nature of your position. It truly sucked to be a lonely god king. This wasn't just about privacy. It was about the fundamental inability to form genuine human bonds based on equality and trust. Everyone around you had an agenda, a desire for power, wealth, or influence. Friendship with a monarch was a perilous affair for the subject, as a fall from favor could mean ruin. And for the monarch, it was a constant risk of betrayal. This wasn't the carefully managed public image of a modern political leader, with carefully curated press conferences and vetted social engagements in, say, a brightly lit modern convention center in Washington, D.C. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable emotional starvation. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about the loneliness of the crown is the curious phenomenon of ancient Roman emperors creating elaborate private retreats that were paradoxically filled with statues and fictional characters, rather than genuine human companions. Where emperors like Tiberius, deeply paranoid and isolated, would construct magnificent villas on islands like Capri, populated not by trusted friends, but by vast collections of art, sculptures, and even mythological grottos designed for solitary contemplation. These artistic companions offered a safe, silent audience for their thoughts, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of immense wealth and the deeply disturbing inability to find genuine human connection, forcing them to seek solace in inanimate objects. Imagine yourself walking through a beautiful villa, conversing with statues, knowing they are your truest, safest companions, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be so lonely you preferred stone friends. Consider also the job of a child monarch. Perhaps a young king in a volatile medieval European kingdom, ascended to the throne too young, akin to a diligent modern child star from a bustling entertainment hub like Los Angeles in California. Accustomed to a demanding public life, but still having the comfort of family and friends. Your work begins before you can even properly understand it. You are crowned, but the real power is held by regents. Often your scheming relatives remember Chapter 3 and the perils of dynastic marriages. You are isolated from other children, surrounded by adults who are either deferential or manipulative. Your playmates might be spies. Your tutors, agents of rival factions, remember Chapter 2 and the spies. You are taught to trust no one, to reveal nothing. The natural joy and innocence of childhood are replaced by a chilling awareness of political intrigue and personal danger. You are taught to perform your role, to be a king, but never truly allowed to be a child. This profound emotional and social deprivation was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of paparazzi and public scrutiny with modern child psychology and dedicated personal guardians in a brightly lit modern private school in, say, suburban Malibu, California. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of early exposure to power and isolation on the psychological development of child monarchs, and whether the lack of normal social interaction contributed to later autocratic tendencies. Profound eccentricity, or a lifelong struggle with genuine empathy. Then there was the burden of being beyond reproach, yet constantly judged. Imagine yourself as a powerful emperor, perhaps Ashoka the Great of the Mauryan Empire, grappling with the immense moral weight of your past conquests and trying to lead your empire towards peace and Buddhist principles. Your job is to be an almost impossibly perfect moral exemplar, a beacon of justice and righteousness. Yet you are human, prone to doubts, errors, and personal failings. You can confess your sins to no one. Seek counsel from no equal. Every decision you make is scrutinized by countless subjects and judged by history. The very act of exercising your absolute power, even for good, separates you from the common human experience of wrestling with moral dilemmas and seeking forgiveness. You are placed on a pedestal, but that pedestal is also a prison. It truly sucked to be a perfectly isolated leader. This wasn't theoretical. Countless monarchs who sought to rule justly or implement significant reforms often found themselves deeply isolated by their unique moral and political burdens. Their power, which could affect vast change, also meant they bore the sole responsibility for its consequences, with no one truly able to share the load. This wasn't the collaborative decision-making of a modern democratic government, with checks and balances and a system of shared accountability and, say, the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable moral solitude. Even the job of having no true friends among your family was agonizing. Imagine a king surrounded by his children, siblings, and cousins, yet knowing that many of them are vying for his throne or secretly aligned with rivals. He cannot relax, cannot be vulnerable, cannot truly trust the people who should be his closest allies. He might witness his own children turning against each other in bitter rivalries, or be forced to execute a beloved sibling for treason. The love within the royal family is often a brittle, transactional thing, easily shattered by ambition and fear. Remember Chapter 3, the profound longing for genuine affection and unconditional support, a basic human need, is constantly denied, replaced by suspicion and political calculation. It truly sucked to have treacherous relatives. The jobs of ancient royalty, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about wielding power. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against profound emotional isolation and the constant threat of betrayal from those closest to them. The perpetual distrust, the lack of true confidence, the burden of being a child monarch, and the agonizing realization that even family ties were transactional. All were terrifying harbingers of dubious personal well-being. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their lives were not just privileged existences, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every interaction, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, emotional menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly lonely figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more devoid of genuine human connection and emotional intimacy than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when combined with pervasive fear and suspicion, created a gilded cage of solitude and emotional deprivation, where the very essence of human connection was sacrificed for the sake of royal legitimacy. They make us appreciate the value of true friendship, the warmth of family bonds based on love, and the freedom to be vulnerable with trusted individuals, and the profound comfort of knowing that our relationships, however imperfect, are ideally built on mutual respect and genuine affection, not on ruthless calculations of power and betrayal. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the loneliness of the crown, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of emperors conversing with statues and child monarchs living under constant surveillance. If Chapter 8 exposed the profound emotional isolation of royal life, tonight we'll delve into the foundational period of their suffering, education, and extremis. We're going to explore the stark, often utterly brutal, reality of how ancient princes and princesses, destined for the throne, were subjected to rigorous, often physically and psychologically punishing, training designed to forge them into ruthless, resilient, and politically astute rulers. Contemplating how individuals from the tenderest age faced the chilling prospect of relentless academic pressure, grueling physical drills, and the immense psychological burden of knowing their every failure could jeopardize their future. Transforming childhood into a demanding apprenticeship for power, and every lesson into a test of their very survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the pursuit of ultimate leadership often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar lesson a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, a young royal child, perhaps akin to a diligent modern prodigy from a prestigious private school in, say, Andover, Massachusetts. Accustomed to high academic standards and extracurricular excellence, but also to emotional support and a balanced childhood. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought, after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2. The crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3. The existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4. The terrifying physical dangers of battle from Chapter 5. The suffocating demands of royal protocol from Chapter 6. The excruciating pain of ancient medicine from Chapter 7. The chilling emptiness of true isolation from Chapter 8. And now you face the relentless, often terrifying, demands of your royal education. There are no nurturing playdates, no gentle encouragement, no focus on emotional intelligence, no concept of childhood as a period of carefree development, and certainly no right to simply be a child, as found in a modern educational system. Instead, you witness or are constantly subjected to grueling physical training, often brutal disciplinary methods, relentless academic study often in multiple languages and complex subjects like law, statecraft, and theology, and an expectation that you will master every skill necessary to rule. Every moment fraught with the risk of physical injury, emotional breakdown, or the terrifying consequence of failing to meet the impossible standards set for a future monarch. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed system of modern elite education. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your understanding of childhood and humane learning. Consider yourself a nervous young prince, being forced to memorize complex legal codes for hours under the watchful eye of a stern tutor, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the physical punishment for any mistake, knowing that your intellectual and physical endurance are constantly being tested for the sake of the crown, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar violence and profound despair of a royal existence defined by brutal, relentless education and profound despair, or perhaps a concerned child psychologist, studying historical accounts of ancient Spartan royal training in, say, ancient Greece, recognizing the detached efficiency with which child soldiers were forged, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under the oppressive weight of ancient royal education. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of academic failure with modern tutoring services and supportive parenting in a brightly lit modern suburban home in, say, suburban San Diego, California, the hushed whispers of instruction, once a gentle murmur of knowledge, now mingle with the chilling sounds of sharp commands and pained cries. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal failure. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate power often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling reality of education in extremis, where the very essence of ancient royal childhood was not about profound emotional fulfillment or personal happiness, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming every lesson into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for dynastic survival, and revealing a chilling truth that in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar drill a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. When you think of a child of privilege today, you might imagine a relaxed upbringing, perhaps private tutors, but ultimately a childhood filled with play and exploration. But for many ancient princes and princesses, their early years were a relentless, often brutal, apprenticeship for power. They were not raised to be happy, well-adjusted individuals. They were trained to be rulers, which meant being ruthless, disciplined, and capable of enduring immense hardship. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why ancient royalty had it miserable and more. Focusing on the chilling reality of education in extremis, a common historical truth is that ancient royal education was extraordinarily rigorous and often harsh, encompassing not only traditional academic subjects like rhetoric, history, and law, but also intensive physical training in warfare, horsemanship, and martial arts, alongside strict moral and political indoctrination. Princes and princesses were often separated from their families at a young age, subjected to severe discipline, and denied the comforts of a normal childhood, designed to strip them of weakness and forge them into resilient, cunning, and absolute rulers. Reflecting a brutal reality where their formative years were a constant test of endurance, intellect, and loyalty, with failure potentially leading to disinheritance or even death. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological impact of such intense and often brutal early training on the personalities and decision-making styles of ancient rulers, and whether the documented instances of their ruthlessness or stoicism were primarily a result of their inherent personalities, or a necessary adaptation to the grueling demands of their royal upbringing. Imagine yourself, then, a young Spartan prince, perhaps at the tender age of 7, akin to a diligent modern child athlete from a highly competitive sports academy in, say, in Bradenton, Florida, accustomed to intense training but still receiving regular breaks and emotional support. Your education begins with being taken from your family and sent to the Agog, the state-sponsored training system. Here, you learn not about reading poetry or playing games, but about survival, obedience, and warfare. You are deliberately underfed to encourage you to steal and be punished if caught, for clumsiness, not for theft. You sleep on hard beds, bathed in cold water, and walk barefoot in all weather. Your physical training is relentless wrestling, running, fighting with mock weapons, always pushing your body to its limits, often under the lash of older boys or instructors. You are taught to endure pain without complaint, to never show weakness, and to prioritize the state above all else. Emotional expression is scorned. Your childhood is stripped away, replaced by a brutal regimen designed to produce a hardened warrior and an unyielding ruler. It truly sucked to be a Spartan prince in training. This wasn't just about physical fitness, it was a total immersion designed to indoctrinate loyalty and resilience, to remove any trace of softness or individual sentiment. The goal was to create a perfect instrument of the state, a fearless leader, regardless of the personal cost. This wasn't the holistic development of a modern boarding school, with diverse curricula and psychological counseling and, say, a brightly lit modern campus in Concord, New Hampshire. This was raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable physical and emotional brutality, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about education in extremis is the curious phenomenon of ancient Persian princes being trained in the art of precise, brutal public justice from a young age. Where, in the Achaemenid Persian Empire, future kings were not only educated in horsemanship and warfare, but also meticulously instructed in the execution of legal punishments and torture. They might even be made to observe, or, in some accounts, participate in the rendering of justice, including the flaying or dismemberment of criminals, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of judicial training and the deeply disturbing willingness to desensitize future rulers to extreme violence as a tool of governance. Imagine yourself a young boy, watching a criminal being flayed alive, knowing you might one day order such a punishment. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to have such a chilling lesson. Consider also the job of a royal tutor for a future emperor. Perhaps in the highly bureaucratic Byzantine Empire, akin to a diligent modern academic dean from a top-tier university in, say, Cambridge, Massachusetts, accustomed to challenging students but also fostering intellectual curiosity. Your work involves teaching complex subjects like Roman law, Greek philosophy, military strategy, and the intricate rituals of the Orthodox Church to a child who is simultaneously incredibly intelligent and incredibly privileged. yet often resistant to instruction and subject to the whims of the imperial court. You are responsible for instilling knowledge, but also discipline and obedience. Failure to adequately prepare the young royal, or worse, to inadvertently allow them to develop weaknesses like compassion or too much intellectual curiosity, could lead to your own downfall or even execution. Remember Chapter 2 in the courtly intrigues. You must balance rigorous instruction with the political realities of the court, knowing that your student is also your future master, and that their success or failure is inextricably linked to your own fate. This profound academic and political pressure was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of student performance with modern pedagogical theories and academic tenure in a brightly lit modern lecture hall in, say, suburban Palo Alto, California. Historians still widely debate the precise balance between theoretical knowledge and practical experience in ancient royal education, and whether a monarch's early exposure to academic rigor truly prepared them for the unpredictable realities of governance, or sometimes fostered an intellectual arrogance detached from the common populace. Then there was the burden of enforced isolation for study. Imagine yourself as a young princess in a highly cultivated Chinese dynasty, perhaps the Tang, destined for a role as a regent or an influential empress. Your job is to master classical texts, poetry, calligraphy, and courtly arts, often confined to specific palace quarters, isolated from the outside world. Your days are filled with relentless study, overseen by strict female tutors and eunuchs. While not physically brutal in the Spartan sense, the mental strain of constant memorization, rigorous artistic practice, and the suppression of any desire for outside experiences would be immense. You are taught to be a paragon of virtue and learning, but also a prisoner of your own intellect, forbidden from truly engaging with the world your education is meant to prepare you for. The expectations for female royals, though different from males, yet were no less demanding or isolating. It truly sucked to be a book-bound princess. This wasn't theoretical. Numerous imperial princesses and empresses, particularly in highly cultured courts like those of China and Byzantium, were raised in gilded cages, their intellect sharpened for political maneuvering and cultural patronage, but at the cost of personal freedom and genuine experience. Their education was a tool of control, ensuring their conformity to royal expectations. This wasn't the self-directed learning of a modern student, with diverse electives and opportunities for internships in, say, a sprawling university library in Beijing, China. This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with utter, inescapable intellectual confinement. Even the job of early political immersion was a terrifying one. Imagine a young prince, perhaps Alexander the Great, being tutored by Aristotle, but also being brought to court at a tender age to observe his father. King Philip II in council, learning the dark arts of diplomacy, betrayal, and war firsthand. Your job is to absorb not just theories, but the chilling realities of power. You witness assassinations, political marriages of convenience. Remember Chapter 3, ruthless negotiations, and the constant threat of revolt. You learn that trust is a luxury recall. Chapter 8, and that power often demands cruelty. This exposure to the harsh realities of governance, before your moral compass is fully formed, would undoubtedly leave deep psychological scars, shaping you into a formidable, yet often callous, ruler. It truly sucked to learn statecraft through bloodshed. The jobs associated with ancient royal education, beneath the veneer of privilege, were not just about acquiring knowledge. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against the very essence of childhood and human kindness. The brutal physical training, the desensitization to violence, the immense academic pressure, and the early immersion in ruthless court politics all were terrifying harbingers of dubious personal well-being, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their childhoods were not just periods of growth. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every lesson, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt existential menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly scarred. Figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more devoid of genuine happiness and emotional warmth in their formative years than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when combined with primitive pedagogical methods and ruthless political realities, created a gilded cage of childhood trauma and psychological hardening, where the very essence of human development was sacrificed for the sake of royal legitimacy. They make us appreciate the value of a balanced education, the importance of fostering emotional intelligence, and the right of every child to a protected and nurturing upbringing, and the profound comfort of knowing that our children, however ambitious, are ideally raised to be compassionate, well-rounded individuals, not merely instruments of state power forged through suffering. Let's gently return from the grim reality of education in extremis, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of Spartan princes enduring brutal training and Chinese princesses confined to palace studies. If Chapter 9 exposed the brutal foundations of royal upbringing, tonight we'll bring our journey through ancient royal misery to a close with echoes of grandeur, whispers of peace. We're going to pull back from the specific horrors of their lives and contemplate the overarching irony that despite all their pomp and power, ancient monarchs often endured lives far more miserable and less free than many of their subjects, and certainly less comfortable than the average person today. We'll reflect on the stark contrast between their gilded cages and our modern freedoms, transforming the distant past into a poignant reminder of our present comforts, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the pursuit of ultimate power often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar struggle a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound human degradation. Imagine yourself, now, a modern person reflecting on the lives of these ancient rulers, perhaps akin to a diligent history enthusiast from a small, peaceful town in, say, Vermont, accustomed to a quiet life of personal choice and democratic freedoms. You've grappled with the brutal daily lives of common folk, a grim thought after Chapter 1 of our previous series. The pervasive paranoia of courtly intrigue from Chapter 1 and 2. The crushing demands of dynastic survival from Chapter 3. The existential burden of divine responsibility from Chapter 4. The terrifying physical dangers of battle from Chapter 5. The suffocating demands of royal protocol from Chapter 6. The excruciating pain of ancient medicine from Chapter 7. The chilling emptiness of true isolation from Chapter 8. The brutal realities of royal education from Chapter 9. And now you stand at the precipice of understanding a profound historical irony. There are no political assassinations lurking around your dinner table. No forced marriages for state alliances. No divine curses if your crops fail. No need to personally lead armies into bloody battle. No life dictated by suffocating etiquette. No brutal medical cures for common ailments. No profound isolation at the top of a pyramid of fear. And certainly no childhood spent in grueling, dehumanizing training. As found in your modern democratic society in, say, the United States. Instead, you witness or are constantly surrounded by comforts and freedoms that ancient royalty could only dream of: personal autonomy, scientific understanding, medical advancements, and the simple luxury of privacy and genuine human connection. This is not the structured, albeit often flawed, system of modern life. This is a profound, comforting contrast, a stark reminder of how far humanity has come in terms of individual well-being and personal liberty. Consider yourself a nervous observer, watching early humans trying to survive a harsh winter, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the constant threat of starvation and exposure, knowing that even a common cold could be a death sentence, your body bracing for the inevitable, peculiar discomfort and profound despair of a daily existence defined by brutal, unyielding nature. Or perhaps a concerned public health official, visiting a museum exhibit on ancient human settlements in, say, Washington, D.C., recognizing the detached efficiency with which human life was extinguished by disease and environmental hazards, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged harshness that was a daily reality for those living under these primitive conditions. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of job insecurity with modern social safety nets and career counseling in a brightly lit modern suburban home in, say, suburban San Francisco, California. The hushed whispers of ancient hunters, once a gentle murmur of survival, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant predator calls. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of fear and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying personal violations, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing reliance on physical suffering and profound discomfort. This is the pervasive, often profoundly unsettling, reality of echoes of grandeur, whispers of peace, where the very essence of ancient existence was not about profound emotional fulfillment or societal contribution, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to seize control through sheer terror and strangeness, transforming a daily routine into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal survival, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these ancient times, the promise of fleeting survival often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every peculiar struggle a testament to their desperate desire for control, and every brutal act a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound societal peril. We've spent 9 chapters exploring the hidden miseries of ancient royalty, peeling back the layers of gold and velvet to reveal the raw, often agonizing realities beneath. From the pervasive fear of assassination to the crushing demands of dynastic survival, from the terror of ancient medicine to the suffocating prison of etiquette, and from the brutality of their education to the profound loneliness of their power, it's become clear that the crown was often less a blessing and more a curse. Tonight, as we conclude our journey into why ancient royalty had it miserable and more, we will consider the final irony, the echoes of their grandeur against the whispers of our modern peace, and why, for all their power, you wouldn't trade places with them for anything. A common historical truth is that despite possessing immense wealth, absolute power, and elaborate social hierarchies, ancient monarchs often endured lives characterized by extreme insecurity, chronic paranoia, profound personal sacrifice, and significant physical and psychological suffering, largely due to the pervasive threats of assassination, rebellion, disease, and the crushing weight of their unique responsibilities. This stark reality contrasts sharply with the generally improved quality of life, personal freedoms, and medical advancements enjoyed by individuals in modern democratic societies, highlighting that material luxury and supreme authority did not equate to happiness, safety, or well-being in the ancient world. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of their suffering on the long-term trajectories of their empires, and whether the perceived stability gained through their absolute rule ultimately outweighed the human cost to the rulers themselves. Imagine yourself now, back in your own bed, perhaps in a cozy apartment in, say, Portland, Oregon, contemplating the stark difference between your life and that of an ancient emperor. You might have worries: a looming deadline, a bill to pay, a difficult conversation with a friend. But you are not worried about your food being poisoned. Thanks, FDA. You are not being forced into a political marriage with a stranger unless you choose to, through a dating app. Perhaps you are not held personally responsible for a natural disaster that decimates your city. Thank goodness for meteorologists and disaster relief. You are not expected to lead a charge into a bloody battle. Your military handles that with actual strategy and advanced weaponry. Your daily life is not a suffocating performance dictated by rigid etiquette. You can wear pajamas all day if you want. If you get sick, You have access to modern medicine, not leeches and questionable concoctions. You have the freedom to choose your friends, to express your feelings, and to lead a life that, while perhaps not grand, is infinitely more secure, more comfortable, and more genuinely your own. It truly rocks to be you in the modern age. This isn't to say modern life is perfect or without its own unique stresses, but the fundamental nature of existence has shifted dramatically. The daily visceral threats that defined ancient royal life are largely gone for the average person in a developed nation. We have systems, institutions, and scientific understanding that grant us a level of safety and autonomy unimaginable to a pharaoh or an emperor. The grandeur of their lives was built on a foundation of terror, cruelty, and profound personal sacrifice. Our peace is built on the accumulation of centuries of human progress, often bought at the price of their suffering. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about echoes of grandeur. Whispers of peace is the curious phenomenon of ancient royal figures having private journals or correspondences filled with expressions of deep loneliness and frustration, despite their public image of serene power. Where, while often obscured by official histories and grand pronouncements, some archaeological discoveries or rediscovered texts reveal personal writings by ancient monarchs that speak of profound emotional isolation, yearning for simple comforts, or bitter resentment at their constrained lives. These rare glimpses offer a poignant counterpoint to their public personas, subtly highlighting a pervasive blend of immense external power and the deeply disturbing internal struggle against their own gilded cage. Imagine discovering an emperor's diary, filled not with boasts of conquest, but with quiet laments about his solitude. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried daily. It truly sucked to be so powerful, yet so sad. Consider also the job of a modern individual in a democratic society, perhaps a citizen of the United States, living in a suburban home in, say, Denver, Colorado, accustomed to personal space, privacy, and the right to vote. Your work might involve a job you chose, managing a family, or pursuing hobbies you enjoy. If you disagree with your leader, you can vote them out, protest peacefully, or express your opinions online without fear of immediate execution or torture. Remember Chapter 1 and the constant fear. Your children attend schools where they learn diverse subjects and are encouraged to develop their individuality, a far cry from Chapter 9's brutal training. Your relationships are ideally built on mutual respect and affection, not on political calculation or fear of betrayal. This profound freedom of choice and personal safety was far more immediate and personally secure than anything ancient royalty could ever hope for. Historians still widely debate the precise moments in history when the concept of individual rights and personal freedom began to significantly challenge the absolute authority of monarchs, and whether the gradual shift towards more democratic and secular governance ultimately led to a net increase in human well-being for both rulers and the ruled. Then there was the burden of living without scientific understanding. Imagine an ancient king watching his infant child die from a common infection, helpless, believing it was a divine punishment or an evil spirit, enduring the brutal cures from their physicians, remember Chapter 7. Now, contrast that with a modern parent whose child falls ill, rushes them to a hospital, and watches as antibiotics or advanced medical procedures save their life. The sheer terror and helplessness of living in a world without germ theory, without proper sanitation, without effective medicine, was a burden shared by all in antiquity, but perhaps felt most acutely by those who, despite all their power, could do nothing to save their loved ones or themselves. It truly sucked to be medically ignorant. This wasn't theoretical. The vast majority of ancient royal families were decimated by disease, infant mortality, and crude medical interventions. Their grandeur could not protect them from the microscopic horrors that modern science has largely conquered. This wasn't the sophisticated medical care of a modern world, with vaccines and advanced diagnostics, guided by rigorous scientific research in, say, the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, This was raw, primal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with utter, inescapable biological vulnerability. Even the job of owning your own life narrative was denied them. Imagine an ancient emperor whose entire life, from birth to death, was recorded, spun, and reinterpreted by scribes, poets, and historians, often at his own command or that of his successors. His triumphs were exaggerated, his failures omitted or blamed on others, and his personal feelings were rarely, if ever accurately depicted. Recall the discussion of public performance in Chapter 6. He was a symbol, a legend, but rarely a truly understood human being. Now contrast that with the ability of a modern individual to share their own story, to express their authentic self through social media, personal memoirs, or simply private conversations. The ancient monarch, for all their fame, was trapped in a narrative created for them, not by them. It truly sucked to be a living myth. The jobs of ancient royalty, beneath the glittering facade, were not just about wielding power. They were about a relentless, terrifying struggle against fundamental human limitations and the profound cost of absolute authority. The lack of true safety, the absence of personal freedom, the vulnerability to disease, and the inability to live an authentic life all were terrifying harbingers of dubious well-being. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their daily lives. Their lives were not just privileged existences. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every command, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, existential menace. These were the powerful, yet profoundly miserable figures whose lives, despite their immense privilege, were often more filled with fear, pain, and isolation than many of their subjects. They remind us that absolute power, when combined with primitive conditions, pervasive paranoia, and crushing responsibility, created a gilded cage of suffering. They make us appreciate the progress of human civilization, the value of individual liberty, the marvels of modern science, and the simple comfort of being able to live a life that is largely your own. So, as you drift off tonight, remember the ancient kings and queens, not for their crowns and palaces, but for the silent misery that often lay beneath. Be grateful for the comfort of your own bed, the safety of your home, and the quiet peace of a world where you are free to live your own life, unburdened by the terrifying weight of a crown. Good night. So we have gone through 10 chapters together, exploring the unexpected sufferings of the ancient kings, from the constant fear of assassination, forced marriages for political reasons, the burden of deification, the dangers on the battlefield, to the suffocating royal rituals, brutal medical treatments, extreme loneliness, and a childhood stolen by harsh education. Hopefully you have felt more secure in your current life, where these burdens no longer exist. Let the images of the splendid but dangerous palace fade away, and instead feel grateful for the peace and freedom you have.